And we're going to go ahead and get started. So good morning. On behalf of the Central Coast Veterans Memorial Museum, thank you for joining us today. I'd like to welcome all of you to our first episode of this new virtual museum program we're launching. I'm Sarah Twisselman. I am the communications director on the board, and I've been volunteering with the museum for about 9 years in different capacities. So it's a real pleasure to be part of this group and to be with you guys today. So this program is an exciting new venture that we're launching, and it's a new way for the museum to engage with the public in greater detail about our museums and our stories of Central Coast veterans. And we believe if you've heard one veteran story, you've heard one veteran story. Every veteran has a story, and they're so diverse, and they're all important. So we're going to take the opportunity with this program to dive in and just give a little bit more understanding of a few different veterans from the Central Coast. So today, with today being March 29th, our National Vietnam War Veterans Day, we remember those who gave all, and we honor those who served. And in today's episode, we are going to talk more about the significance of this day and how it came to be. We are also going to talk about the Vietnam War in a very condensed timeline leading up to the story of Alec Kelley, who was a SLO high school and Cal Poly graduate who joined the US Air Force and was able to return back to the Central Coast and live out the rest of his life here. And we're going to talk more about his war experiences and also his accomplishments. So we have a wonderful guest speaker, Mr. Darrel Ankeny, who is joining us all the way from Colorado. And Darrel is going to share with us his experiences training and serving with Alec Kelley throughout in the Vietnam War, where they forged a friendship that lasted well beyond their military days. We also have Chuck Belmont and Steve David, two local Vietnam War veterans and docents at the museum, who will be co-presenting the majority of today's presentation. And with that said, I'd like to introduce our museum president, Mr. Bart Topham. And from there, Bart will take it from there.
Thank you, Sarah. As mentioned, I'm Bart Topham, president and director of the Central Coast Veterans Museum. And I want to welcome all of you to this inaugural presentation of our virtual museum series. Our museum was formed 20 years ago this year by a dedicated group of Central Coast veterans. Despite being closed for a year and a half due to the pandemic, we're once again open and busy, developing new displays, education and outreach programs, special events, and much more. We're also back in business, emphasizing and promoting the Veterans History Project, a free service of the museum that provides and preserves veteran stories for the family, the community, and for future generations. As I said, this is our 20th anniversary year, and we remain a free nonprofit experience, enlightening, educating, and honoring all veterans with an emphasis on our Central Coast veterans. At our core, we're an education and research facility dedicated to preserving and displaying artifacts and stories, honoring the efforts and sacrifices of our veterans. We offer numerous opportunities for community volunteers, in addition to our Cal Poly intern program, our history speakers program, school outreach, recently launched a social media series, all spotlighting Central Coast veterans and their stories. This new virtual museum program is just the latest example of our efforts to serve and inform our community. And we greatly appreciate and count on your support. Thank you. As a Vietnam veteran myself, I'd like to also recognize today, March 29th, as National Vietnam Veterans Day. I want to thank all of the Vietnam veterans and their families and assure you, you will not be forgotten. Alec Kelley's story is just an example of the many stories of the Central Coast veterans that we have to share. Alec flew over 100 combat missions, mostly in North Vietnam, where the pilot casualty rate was 50%. That kind of courage can't be measured in normal terms. And I hope you enjoy our brief look at one of our Central Coast heroes. Thank you.
Thank you, Bart.
Sarah.
And now it's my great pleasure to introduce Chuck Belmont, who will begin today's presentation. Chuck, if you want to unmute yourself.
You told me like 6 times and I forgot. So just one quick correction. Thanks, Sarah. And that is that I'm not a Vietnam veteran and Steve is a Vietnam era veteran, just to make sure we're accurate on that. I'm a volunteer at the museum. I'm a Navy veteran, and I'm one of the folks who helped put this presentation together. I'm honored to participate in this tribute to those who served in Vietnam, and especially today's honoree, Alec Kelley. March 29th was chosen as National Vietnam War Veterans Day because March 29th, 1973 was the day the last US combat troops departed the Republic of Vietnam. March 29th, 2012 was proclaimed as Vietnam Veterans Day. The proclamation called upon all Americans to observe this day with appropriate programs, ceremonies, and activities. 5 years later, the Vietnam War Veterans Recognition Act of 2017 was signed, officially recognizing March 29th as National Vietnam War Veterans Day. Today, we are commemorating 47 years since the end of the Vietnam War in 1975. There's a lot to say about Vietnam, but for today's episode, we're limiting our discussion for the most part to today's story that honor Vietnam veterans, their families, and especially Vietnam veteran combat pilot Alec Kelley. At the time, the Vietnam War was the longest war in American history and the most protested at home. The United States became involved in Vietnam both militarily and politically during World War II. At the start of World War II, the Japanese were seeking to exploit the vast resources of Southeast Asia, which was occupied by the French. In the early 1940s, the United States supplied the Viet Minh with arms and ammunition to help fight the Japanese under the leadership of Ho Chi Minh. At the time, this was the only effective resistance to the Japanese in French Indochina. In return, the Viet Minh supplied the United States with military intelligence concerning the Japanese and helped rescue downed American pilots. By 1945, the Viet Minh had won control over a large part of North Vietnam and eventually seized the capital of Hanoi. By the time of the 1950s, Ho Chi Minh had led revolutionary forces against the French after World War II, fighting an 8-year war that led to the division of Vietnam into 2 countries, North and South Vietnam. These maps show North and South Vietnam as well as the country's geographic location related to other countries in Southeast Asia, which helps explain bombing missions from Thailand, as well as the danger for pilots flying over countries other than Vietnam. One thing I'd like to point out on the maps here is the relationship to countries surrounding Vietnam. The U.S. began providing military equipment and advisors to help the government of South Vietnam resist a communist takeover by North Vietnam and its South Vietnam-based allies, the Viet Cong guerrilla fighters. Some people may not have understood the relationship between the North Vietnamese Army, commonly called the NBA, and the Viet Cong. Under the authority of President Lyndon B. Johnson, the United States first deployed troops to Vietnam in 1965 in response to the Gulf of Tonkin incident of August 2nd and 4th, 1964. On March 8th, 1965, 3,500 U.S. Marines landed near Da Nang in South Vietnam, thereby escalating the Vietnam conflict and making the United States first action of the subsequent Vietnam War. Operation Rolling Thunder was the code name for an American bombing campaign during the Vietnam War U.S. military aircraft attack targets throughout North Vietnam. It began on March 2nd, 1965, partially in response to a Viet Cong attack on the U.S. Air Base at Pleiku. The operation went from March 1965 to November 1968, over 3 years. Rolling Thunder was the longest bombing campaign ever conducted by American power. Under President Johnson's direction, the U.S. Navy and Air Force planes executed 1 million sorties against bridges, power plants, and supply depots in North Vietnam from March 2nd, 1965 to November 2nd, 1968. By mid-1966, American planes were attacking military and industrial targets throughout North Vietnam. The only areas considered off limits for the bombing raids were the cities of Hanoi and Haiphong and the 10-mile buffer zone along the border of China. The 8th Tactical Fighter Wing stationed at Ubon Royal Thai Air Force Base was the first U.S. Air Force fighter wing sent to Southeast Asia to execute missions over Vietnam during the Vietnam War. They flew the F-4C and D Phantom II. For efforts during the Vietnam War, the 8th Tactical Fighter Wing received 4 Presidential Unit citations and 5 Air Force Outstanding Unit awards. In addition, the wing led the Air Force with 38.5 MiG kills. The sustained bombing of North Vietnam lasted for more than 3 years, with occasional brief interruptions. Johnson finally halted the campaign on October 31st, 1968, to pursue negotiated settlement with the communists. Now I'm going to turn it over to Steve.
Thanks, Chuck. I'm Steve David. I'm also a volunteer and docent at the Veterans Memorial Museum and an 8-year Navy veteran. I appreciate the opportunity to participate in our observation of this special day in our military's history. Alec Kelley was born on March 6, 1941 in San Luis Obispo, California. He was a graduate of San Luis Obispo Senior High School, class of 1958. He stayed in San Luis to attend Cal Poly University, where he earned his Bachelor of Science degree in Mechanical Engineering. After graduating, Alec joined the United States Air Force, and he attended Officer Training School at Lackland Air Force Base in Texas. He remained in Texas to attend pilot training at Webb Air Force Base. Now, in just a minute, our guest speaker is going to give us more detail about the career of Captain Kelley, but in brief, Alec served in Vietnam, flying 145 combat missions, and was awarded the Distinguished Flying Cross. Following his service in the United States Air Force, he became a commercial pilot. In the 1990s, Alec retired from United Airlines and returned to the home that he loved here in San Luis Obispo. When the Central Coast Veterans Memorial Museum was conceived, no one was surprised that knew Alec because he wanted to get involved. He became the museum's docent coordinator for a period of time, and he served on the board of directors from 2002 to 2008. Sadly, due to illness, Alec answered his last roll call on September 29, 2008. At this time, it is my honor to bring Darrel Ankeny into the conversation. Darrel was a captain in the United States Air Force who trained with Alec and fought beside him during their time together in Vietnam. I really want to add my special thanks to Darrel for his willingness to help us honor our local veteran, Alec Kelley, and share his personal experiences with us. Darrel, if you would, please introduce yourself and tell us about the photo that we're looking at.
Well, thank you, Steve and Chuck and Sarah, for inviting me to help honor my friend Alec's memory. This museum was such an important part of his life in San Luis, so this is just terrific. The picture you're looking at was taken in front of our favorite airplane, the F-4, Phantom II, built by McDonnell Douglas. It was taken at the Aircraft Display Museum at March Air Force Base in Riverside, California in 2004 during a celebration of his grandson Peyton's high school graduation. That's Alec on the right-hand side of the picture. We met in 1964 as newly minted Air Force pilots, fresh from flight school. We lived as bachelors together initially and had lots of common interests, especially fast airplanes. Because we were both West Coast guys, he from San Luis and me from Seattle, Washington, Eglin Air Force Base, where we were initially stationed, located in the panhandle of Florida, was our introduction to the South. We met our future wives there, two of the South's finest, who hailed from just up the road in Mississippi. And the four of us were lifelong best friends. Next slide.
So here we see three photos. On the left, Alec is standing in front of a jet, which Darrel will tell us about. There's a group photo of a whole bunch of pilots in front of an F4. And in the lower right-hand side, we see an F4. So Darrel, tell us about these photos, where they were taken and when, and then tell us about how you and Alec ended up stationed together in Thailand and fighting in Vietnam.
Sure, thank you, Steve. The photo on the left is Alec standing in front of our supersonic jet trainer. They're called the T-38. We call it the White Rocket because that's just exactly what it was. And that was taken in pilot training where Alec was at Webb Air Force Base in Big Spring, Texas. The picture with all the pilots standing in front of it, that's when we formed our initial squadron when we were training together for the first time. You get an idea of the size of the F4 because there are over 40 of us in that picture in front of that airplane. Well, after a couple of years of training and preparation, our squadron, the 4th Tactical Fighter Squadron, flew 28 F4s from Florida to Thailand with stops in Hawaii and the island of Guam in the South Pacific. Upon landing at Ubon Royal Thai Air Force Base in Thailand, our squadron assumed a new number, the 435th. That was July of 1967. We were one of 4 squadrons that made up the 8th Tactical Fighter Wing, commanded by Robin Knowles, a colorful and highly decorated combat veteran of World War II and Korea. Next slide. Next slide. There we go.
Great. Okay, here we see another photo of Captain Kelley in a ball cap. The photo on the right is that ball cap. And so Darrel, what I want you to do for us is tell us about the significance of the numbers that we see in those notes that are written on the underside of his ball cap.
Sure. Yeah, that's how Alec kept tabs of how many flights he flew. He had some hash marks on the other side of that flight cap. But our ticket to go home from the war was to fly 100 missions over North Vietnam, or 1 year, whichever came first. We also flew combat missions in Laos, but they didn't count toward the completion of our assignment. The numbers on Alec's hat show 145 total combat missions, 45 of which were not counted toward our going home missions, i.e. North Vietnam. So the extra 45 were called freebies. They didn't count. 63 of those missions, the number 63 there refers to the night missions that Alec flew. And that's significant because they were usually flown in the southern part of North Vietnam and Laos. So if you got shot down at night, you knew rescue wouldn't be attempted until the next day. Also, anti-aircraft fire at night looks like a giant hose of arcing yellow lights coming at you during your bombing run. So you really see what resistance you're up against. The interesting thing here is that 1 in 5 bullets were tracers. So there were actually 5 times as many bullets coming at you than you could actually see. The bottom number is 23. I wasn't sure whether Alec flew 23 or 26 combat missions over the most heavily defended area of North Vietnam, the industrial area around Hanoi and the port of Haiphong just southeast of Hanoi. This area was referred to as Route Pac 6. That's why you have the Roman numeral 6 there. Because of the defenses in this area, if you got shot down, there was literally no chance of rescue. Just too dangerous. So you're either a prisoner of war or you were killed. So he flew that number of missions in Pac 6. Next slide.
Okay, so here we see Captain Kelley being congratulated by Captain Jim, nicknamed Captain Doc Graham, after Kelley's 100th mission over North Vietnam on June 17th of 1968. Graham was Kelley's flight surgeon and radar operator. So Darrel, why don't you tell us about the significance again of those 100 combat missions and that patch that came with it?
Sure. Well, first of all, the Doc Graham was our squadron flight surgeon, doctor. He was a terrific guy. He didn't have to fly combat missions. He wanted to know what we went through to go into combat day in and day out. So he flew with us periodically to get that experience. We didn't let him fly in Pac 6 though. It was too dangerous. So he and Alec decided that he would fly in Alec's backseat on Alec's 100th mission. And that's the celebration after they landed and getting out of the airplane. The patch, the 100 mission patch, is very significant. Each fighter squadron described its own 100 mission patch. Only those crew members who completed 100 combat missions over the North were allowed to wear it. It was the goal of each of us that each of us worked toward from the day we arrived in Southeast Asia, because we knew once we accomplished that, we were on our way home to our loved ones who had in their own way fought that war with us. Statistically, in 100 missions over North Vietnam, you had a 50-50 chance of getting shot down. And if you were shot down, you had just a 50-50 chance of being rescued. Not good odds, and we knew that. Next slide. Next slide.
So here at our museum, we have displayed what is referred to as Captain Kelley's party suit, which, as you can see, includes a number of patches. Darrel, tell us about the party suit, why the pilots referred to it as such, and describe some of those patches for us.
Sure, the party suit was a lot of fun, and we all had bright blue suits. They were custom made by local tailors in downtown Yubon. They were called party suits and had all of our favorite patches shown on them, as you can see. The suits were worn and still are to various fighter pilot reunions around the country. Typically, after landing from the 100th mission, the party suit and a bottle of champagne arrived at the flight line to the airplane with a horde of well-wishers from the squadron to meet the airplane and congratulate the pilot. The cork was popped and the party flight suit donned, pretty much right there at the airplane, with a 100 mission patch already sewn on, and the celebration began. Fun times. Next slide. The party suit patches, I'll describe them. Upper left is the 8th Tactical Fighter Squadron patch, denoting that the wearer is or was at one time a member of the Wolf Pack. That was the nickname of the 8th Tactical Fighter Squadron. The blue patch just to the right is, if you can read it, it says SA-2 Flight Examiner. That's a patch that shows a surface-to-air missile, or SAM, en route to one of our airplanes and Snoopy cussing at it. We dodged a lot of those during our mission, so someone decided that we were experienced enough with them to critique their operation. Thus the writing at the bottom, SA-2 Flight Examiners. We were all flight examiners from surface-to-air missiles. The lower left patch is the River Rats patch, River Rats, denoting that the wearer had flown at least one mission to Route Pac 6. The red line in that patch is the Red River which flows from China southeast through Hanoi and down to the Haiphong Harbor. The white jagged symbol is the bottom, rather is the location of a about 5,000 foot 40-mile-long ridge of terrain northwest of Hanoi that's dubbed Thud Ridge. With so many F-105 fighters called Thuds flying bombing missions, it was used to conceal their arrival to the target area. The yellow star is Hanoi. The wearer of this patch could be a member of an organization called the Red River Valley Fighter Pilots Association, which is still in existence today. We go to the previous slide. The black and white patch to the right is the Yankee Air Pirate patch. That's how the Vietnamese refer to us, so we embraced the term and someone designed a patch about it. On the right shoulder was the 100 mission patch, which we just talked about. And on the left shoulder was the squadron patch of the 435th Tactical Fighter Squadron. Next slide.
So here we see 3 more patches that are part of the display case that Alex has there at the museum. There are a total of 8 patches in the display case, but several of them are duplicates from the previous slide. So these 3 we haven't mentioned yet. Darrell, why don't you just quickly walk us through what these 3 patches represent?
Okay, well, the one on the left was the 4th Tactical Fighter Squadron. That's their initial fighter squadron in Eglin Air Force Base. And the one in the middle was issued by McDonnell Douglas, the manufacturer of the F-4. Everybody that flew the plane got a patch. And at one point, Alec and I were both transferred to another squadron in Florida, the Fighting 40th. So, of course, we had a squadron patch for that squadron also.
All right, there's a number of photographs here in this slide and several things to talk about. The photo there on the left is the photo that was on the display at the museum when Alec was the docent coordinator and a board member. His picture was displayed with all the other staff members that volunteered at the museum at that time. That photo and plaque are still on display at our museum today. It's on the wall right next to the front entrance to the museum. The large photo there in the middle shows Alec Kelley's display case at the start of the section in the museum that's dedicated to the Vietnam War. Alec himself designed and built that case. In the center of the case, you see a full-size mannequin displaying his flight suit. In the lower half, there's a shot of his dress uniform with his captain's bars, his aviator wings, and his medals. There's also a collection of photos, patches, plaques, a model of the F-4, and other memorabilia, including a photo of his father. His father fought in World War I, and his father's uniform and World War helmet are hanging there in the display case just over the right shoulder of the flight suit. In the lower right corner of the slide, we have a photo of Alec's Distinguished Flying Cross. We don't actually have that medal in the display case, but I do want to thank Alex's daughter, Dee Dee, for the photos that she sent us. They were a wonderful and welcome addition for our presentation. The last item of note, you can see over the left shoulder of the flight suit, part of an American flag that's displayed on the back of that display case. We'll go to the next slide here and we'll talk about what that is. So here's a better photo of the American flag with what is called a blood chit. And so Darrell, tell us what this is, why it is so important to have it as part of Captain Kelley's display.
Well, the blood chit was a document originally printed in silk that contains a promise, and it's written in multiple languages, 14 languages during the Vietnam War. It basically says, I'm an American and I need your help, food, shelter, and assistance. I won't harm you and I bear no malice toward your people. And if you can help me, my government will reward you. Each one had a serial number at the bottom, and it basically served as a safe conduct pass for a downed aviator in need of help from the local people. It was carried in the side pocket of our survival vest, and it was wrapped inside of a big 40-inch by 60-inch waterproof survival map. I do not recall any pilot being repatriated by locals as a result of the blood chits, though. Next slide.
So here we see Captain Kelley's medals. There's 9 total. Darrell, take us through the first 4 there that are the most important ones and tell us a bit about each one.
Sure thing. Top row on the left is the Distinguished Flying Cross, also known as DFC. And it's our nation's highest award for extraordinary aerial achievement. It's awarded to an aviator who, during military operations, exemplifies acts of heroism or extraordinary achievement while participating in aerial flight. The citation which accompanied the award of the DFC to Alec reads as follows. Captain Alexander D. Kelley distinguished himself by extraordinary achievement while participating in aerial flight as an F-4D aircraft commander on 12 February 1968. On that date, Captain Kelley was a member of a flight of 4 F-4Ds leading a combat air patrol mission against a heavily defended military target on the Northeast Railroad of North Vietnam. Captain Kelley's task was to protect bombing forces from Alec's task was to protect bombing forces from attacks by hostile aircraft. Upon egress from the target area, Captain Kelley's flight engaged 2 MiG-21 fighters. They were attempting to pursue the ingressing forces. Captain Kelley performed his task as a wingman without flaw, providing necessary coverage for his flight leader, who pursued the MiGs into extremely hostile territory. Captain Kelley's performance in protecting his flight leader enabled the leader to destroy one of the MiG-21s with air-to-air missiles. The professional competence, aerial skill, and devotion to duty displayed by Captain Kelley reflect great credit upon himself and the United States Air Force. The one right next to it is the Air Medal, top row middle. And this medal is awarded for a single act of heroism or meritorious achievements while participating in aerial flight in actual combat in support of operations where exposure to enemy fire is expected. The far right is the Presidential Unit Citation. That medal is awarded to units, squadrons, or wings for extraordinary heroism in action against an armed enemy. This was awarded to Alec as a member of the 8th Tactical Fighter Wing for his achievements in the war. The one right below the Distinguished Flying Cross is the Air Force Outstanding Unit Award. This is awarded by the Secretary of the Air Force for clearly outstanding service for a single specific act or accomplishment in support of a unit's mission or goals. Also awarded to Alec because of his involvement with the 8th Tactical Fighter Wing at that time.
Okay, thank you, Darrell. The one I'll mention there, center of the middle row, the National Defense Service Medal. That medal was awarded to all members of all branches of the military that served during the Vietnam era, basically. The Vietnam era went from January 1st, 1961 to August 14th in 1974. So it was awarded not just to those that served in Vietnam, but to every member of the military that served during that time frame. Okay, in this slide, we see 2 plaques that are in the display case for Alec Kelley. The first one is located at the bottom center of the display case. It notes the fact that he did fly 145 combat missions, that he was awarded the Distinguished Flying Cross, and that he was a proud graduate from San Luis Obispo Senior High School, class of 1958. The one there on the right, this is the 435th Tactical Fighter Squadron patch mounted on a plaque with a brass plate below it. I know you probably can't read what it says on that plate, but basically it says Captain Alec Kelley 4/435th Tactical Fighter Squadron. Darrell told us about the fact that they started off in Florida as the 4th and ended up in Vietnam or in Thailand as the 435th Tactical Fighter Squadron. That was from July 1965 to June 68. And at the very bottom row, it says 100 missions NVN, North Vietnam. So Darrel, those dates from July 65 to 68, you and Alex spent a lot of time together. You've told us a lot of the stories so far, but if there's more now that you'd like to kind of encapsulate with this slide, go ahead and tell us about some other experiences.
Well, some other experiences with Alec and me where, you know, I think Chuck mentioned and emphasized from 65 to 68 is when Operation Rolling Thunder was going on. So we were right in the thick of things in 1967 and 68. We flew about every second or third day, and we were on a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week operation. In fact, because of that schedule, a plaque would appear on the Officers Club bar every Sunday saying, "Today is Sunday," just to remind us what day it was. We flew some missions together, one of which was notable. We were 2 airplanes in a flight of 4 on a bombing mission over the Hanoi area, and my airplane was damaged from a surface-to-air missile. Knocked out my left engine with other damage, and we were able to clear the target area, and the leader had Alec escort me, or rather lead me, to a diversion base in northern Thailand, for which I was very grateful. Alec led me to safety. On another mission at night, it was just Alec and the 2 of us and our 2 co-pilots. The target area was near the coast of the southern part of North Vietnam. The night flights were interesting because of all the things that I mentioned before, but we turned off all our exterior lights so the AAA gunners couldn't see us. They could hear us, but they couldn't see us. So we maintained separation by communicating prearranged compass positions in relationship to the target. Tracer rounds really lit up the sky, but we were able to accomplish our mission and return to base. So we did relax between missions. We both had motorcycles, and we would ride off outside of the base, out in the countryside, and find some hills to jump. It was a great way to get away from the rigors of the war. We did have to obtain Thai driver's license, though, from Ubon, Thailand. That was interesting, because the only thing we could read on the license was our names. We had no idea what we had signed, so we just trusted it was a driver's license. So, and after we finished our tour, Alec was assigned to a base in Arizona, and I was assigned to a base in California, and that finished our Air Force commitments. That's about it, Steve.
All righty. Well, Darrel, thank you so much for your amazing stories and your insights. We do truly appreciate it. Before we move to the dialogue portion of the program, where we're going to take and answer questions, Darrel, if you would, why don't you give us some final thoughts for today?
Well, I do have a final thought, and it's this. This event has given me an opportunity to reflect and even relive some of Alex and my times together. We had so many really fun times over the years. And of course, the obvious challenges of our time in combat, which probably bonded us even more. So to all of you and all the staff at the Central Coast Vietnam Memorial Museum, just a simple but very heartfelt thank you.
Thank you, Darrel. And now I'm pleased to introduce Captain Kelley's daughter, Dee Dee Kelley Strammel. I want to give her an opportunity to give her final thoughts about today's presentation about her father.
Oh, thank
Dee
you. Thank you so much, Steve. Hi, everyone. I just wanted to thank everybody that worked on this tribute to my dad that made it possible today. I know that Dad would be humbled and honored by all that you've said and all that you've done to make this possible. You know, it's really special to me as well, because I know that some of my extended family, and especially my children, probably have never heard some of these stories. So it's special to me that all of you at Central Coast Veterans Memorial Museum in San Luis Obispo are helping to preserve and honor my dad's service to this country, so that generations to come will know about him. I especially wanted to thank Darrel Ankeny today. I really can't emphasize enough how special Darrel and Trish Ankeny are to our family. He and my dad, as you know, were best friends. As Darrel said, they were roommates, they were combat companions. He was best man in my dad's wedding. And we were neighbors on and off since really about 1965. Trish was my mom's best friend as well. And so since both my mom and my dad have passed away now, Trish and Darrel have really kind of stepped into their shoes and filled a big empty space and hole in our heart and really have become family to us. You know, Darrel is humbled and hasn't said anything about his time in Vietnam, but he is also a very decorated veteran as well, with 2 distinguished flying crosses, a Silver Star and a Purple Heart for his tremendous service to our country in Vietnam. And I really can't think of a better person to have helped pay tribute to my dad today. So thank you so much, Darrel. Not only to my dad, but really to all the Vietnam veterans out there. You're a special guy. So thank you again to all of you for the special tribute. It's reminded me how really special my dad was and has given me a renewed respect for him and for all of our veterans. Thank you.
Thank you, Dee Dee. Really appreciate that. Sarah, back to you.
Well, thank you again, Chuck, Steve, for co-presenting today, and for Darrel. Such one more minute, anybody? So I think we will wrap it up then. I'm going to ask Bart, our president, to say a few words to end the call, and we'll take it from there. Bart?
Thank you, Sarah. Yeah, thank you. First, I'd like to thank Darrel and Dee Dee and all of Alec's family for sharing the stories and their time with us. As you know, the mission of this museum is to preserve these stories, to honor these heroes, and to educate present and future generations on how much our military, our veterans have contributed to this country, and particularly to the Central Coast. So thank you all for attending, and I hope you'll join us for future presentations. Sarah, thank you.
Thanks, Dad. You're the best.